Hello and welcome our Try 312 family. It's me, Coach Joy, and welcome to our Monday Multi-Sport Monthly. So today we're going to be talking with, of course, before we do anything, I have Coach Brian and Coach Chris, and we're going to talk about their experiences at the inaugural IRONMAN Rockford 70.3. So, Chris, what did you think about the venue, the weekend as a whole?
I was super impressed. For a first year events in the Ironman, obviously they put together a good number of events, so they did a pretty spectacular job. But what really impressed me the most was the town coming out and supporting the event. The forecast was for 100-degree heat index, and so a lot of people were very, very nervous. It was actually a pretty high DNS did not start rate. So a lot of people just were like, you know what, this is too hot. I'm not even going to attempt it. The water temperature was warm as well. So if you had a wetsuit, you'd have to start at the back of the pack. We both did that. I had a few nervous athletes I wanted to start with. So we started towards the back. And so it was a very hot day. It was a very hard day. There was no way around it. The swim I thought went a lot better than expected. I was kind of anticipating horrible water, all this stuff, and it was perfect. The course was designed very well, went right down the middle of the river, so you had fast swim times. I'd say about 10 to 20% faster than average, as we kind of saw across the board. Water temperature was 79 degrees. I used a wetsuit, a full sleeve, and I was okay. I intentionally went a little bit slower, not to overheat, wearing a wetsuit. But I was fine with the wetsuit. And bike was hot once we got out there. We started about an hour after the non-wetsuit swimmers. And so we were starting a good hour into the day, warming up quite a bit. And I used that Tridot, the raised execution tool. And after the fact, I went back and looked and updated the start time, and it adjusted for the additional heat and humidity, and it already automatically slowed me down like another 10, 15 minutes just because of that.
Wow.
So it's interesting how much the heat impacts or should impact. But personally, I went really conservative on the bike, stayed within myself, watched my heart rate like a hawk. Glad I did that. Once I got on the run, I stayed playing with really super conservative, tried to go as easy as possible, while still maintaining just a real slow but running cadence. And I thought, I'm going to hold back and then I'll pick up the pace in the second move. And picking up the pace in the second move, it was definitely getting way too hot. Almost everybody was walking. But I have to say for Rockford, and this, I counted, I think that was my 49th Ironman branded event, if we'd had full Ironmans. And the run course, the Sprinkler Valley, as it's been known now, the neighborhood towards the end of the first loop, for almost like a mile long, every single house came out, turned on their sprinklers. There were dads with hoses spraying you down. There were kids with super soakers. People giving out high fives at literally every 50 to 100 feet. You're getting soaked and cooled down. And that was just truly an amazing experience. I've never seen any other race venue do quite the same thing to come out and support, the crazy athletes racing.
To that point, real quick, I just want to say that they were so much in force that on that second loop, as I was finishing up down that stretch, I've been sprayed so much that day that I was at the point I'm like, I'm good. Like, I did not need any more spray because I could just hear with my shoes and my socks like just being soaking wet. But again, that was 100% a massive help. And shout out to all of those that came out and did that. Yeah,
I think I did the opposite. I tried to avoid the sprinklers in the beginning. That's one side of you just can't not avoid this.
Yeah.
I'm just like, hit me with everything.
Yeah.
So my shoes are still squeaky almost a week later. walking around the other day, people are like, "Why are your shoes so squeaky?" And it was literally from just getting so soaked.
On the last like mile and a half, I did see one athlete where it was like a woman that came over and there was a kid that just had a bucket and just kind of did this little shrug like, "You want me to?" And she's like, "Yes, please." And she just bent over and he just dumped an entire bucket of water on top of her. And she was like, "Woo!" And it's like, all right, that's awesome. So, yeah.
So other than that, Brian, besides Sprinkler Alley,
Yeah.
there is a reel on the IRONMAN Rockford 70.3, their Facebook page, and on Instagram, there is a reel that shows Sprinkler Alley on the run. So if you ever want to know what Sprinkler Alley would look like, look at that reel.
Oh, maybe we'll provide a link.
Yes.
Brian,
what was your overall thoughts of the race, the whole entire race weekend?
Yeah, I actually reflect a lot of the same things Chris had already said. That, yeah, I mean, I was impressed by how the town came out, all the people that came out to support the race, the venue, the execution. I think they did everything possible to try to keep us as cool and comfortable as we possibly could have out there on the course, given the context. The swim was probably my favorite thing about the entire course. I mean, again, I started in the back and the party wave in the back with some of my athletes as well that were unsure of like, do we go with or without wetsuits? And my suggestion to a lot of them was try buoyancy shorts. And that's what I used because I was nice and cool in my Try 312 kit, sponsored by Varlo, which was amazing, by the way. Shout out. And I just had a really comfortable swim. Like as soon as I jumped in, the water temperature was about the same as the air temperature that morning. I almost had clear line of sight throughout the entirety of that swim, and maybe a few people that had to swim around. But again, it felt very smooth. Like the water felt great. I never felt like, there was any major challenge with it, even that we sort of bobbed and weaved through the course a little bit. There's a sort of like a design, a sort of forced curve toward one of the bridges. But again, most everybody seemed to be able to navigate that pretty much with ease and really enjoyed that swim, significantly more so than some of the others. And maybe that was because of that push. And I had not done that distance with a river current before, but that felt great. And there was a lot of things I loved about that bike course. I mean, I'm sure there's over a half a dozen times where I clipped over 30 miles an hour going downhill. But as Chris pointed out, I was also like meticulous about looking at my heart rate the whole day. And I'd gone up a few hills where normally when I'm on the arrows, I flip my watch around so I can see all of my data. And I could tell coming out of some of those hills, I was already shooting up to 160 or more beats per minute. And usually when I get to the top of the crest of the hill and I start going downhill, that's my moment to really shine and just hammer those downhills. This time it was just more of like get some momentum and then just try to coast a little bit more just to bring that heart rate back down a little bit so I could just let it see it come back down into the low 150s, maybe high 140s. And that's when I felt more comfortable to start kind of taking some more advantage of those hills. But I really like that bike course, aside from the 20 to 40 mile an hour gusts that were coming at us directly on the way back. So that was a nice little challenge. But again, a lot of great things about the course. People were still coming out and supporting. So kudos again to them. And, once you got out into the ride, it was just survive and advance. And it was just, again, same thing, just looking at the heart rate, keeping an eye on it. I got maybe 2 steps out of the transition and my heart rate was already at 163. So it just became a heart rate run, basically, where it was a lot of run walk. And that became how my run was going to be dictated. Not about how much I felt. I felt
Right.
good. My legs were good. The heart rate was going to be dictating when and where I was walking and when I was going to start running again. So it was, again, as Chris pointed out, there's a lot of people that were doing the exact same thing, a lot of walking that day. And and speaking of DNF or DNS, with the DNF rate we were looking at, I think it's almost as close to 20% from Rockford. And I think just the general heat and humidity that we had a lot to do with it. And but again, they brought out more ice and cooling towels and water and cooling buses that they had, I believe, on stations like 3, 4, and 5 or 2, 3, and 4. where it was basically like city buses that you could just go into and just sit in and just cool down for a little bit, like that shit that just happened. Speaking of which, like, yeah, it was like some of those, like, where a cloud would come over and you feel a little bit of a breeze. It was like, everybody go now. So it's like just like the one moment you can feel cool doing that run. But I liked the course. And again, my goal was less about any specific time. It was about get through it. And I felt pretty accomplished just by getting through it, because everybody that I've talked to this entire week was like, oh my God, how did you do that? So a lot of people impressed by just, if anyone just not only just starting the line, but also getting through that type of a race. So
I think just putting yourself in that environment is quite daunting.
Yeah.
In of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone should be upset if they did not finish that race, because
Yeah.
basically, 20% of people already deferred.
Yeah.
Ironman has that Flex 90 program where you can defer your entry. I think a lot of people took advantage of that to defer entries.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people did not start that wants to for whatever reason, or got injured, whatever. And then, the DNF rate. So during the event, of the people who started, about 20% did not finish the entry because of the heat. So 1 in 5, sometimes it can just not be your day in the heat.
Nice.
Yeah.
A lot of us were not acclimatized to the heat. It was an early season heat wave. At least I'm not on enough training time in that heat. And sometimes, just you overcook it a little bit. My wife, my beautiful wife, Shelly, unfortunately, she's done a lot of Ironman events, but this one was not her day. And we looked at her heart rate afterwards, and I looked at heart rate data from a whole bunch of our athletes, and her common trend that I found was core body temperature going too high.
Yeah.
Because heart rate was going too high. And Shelly, my wife, she was at her threshold heart rate for 2 hours straight on the bike.
Yeah. That'll do it.
She's going at a normal pace.
Yeah.
But just that hot environment caused the heart rate to be so much elevated. And once your core body temperature gets above a certain point, like,
That's a,
you know when to call it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You're playing it smart. So don't anyone ever feel bad if you're dealing with a race that's 100 degrees to the heat index. It's a different type of race.
Yeah.
That's part of the endurance challenges, is learning how to adapt with the most adversity that can possibly be thrown at you. Just like, any part of life. It's a great parallel to, the hurdles you face.
And racing within yourself.
Yes. Well, one of the things later on, we're going to be talking about heat acclimatization and how you can best go through that. I think a lot of us have, I think all of my half iron races, for some bizarre reason, I have this habit of picking races that are in the hundreds. Chattanooga, Williamsburg, Louisville. So how do you best prepare for that? We're going to talk about that. Now, one of the things I did hear, and I heard that from Dave Kappas, who's one of our lovely friends who announces a lot of races here in the Chicagoland area, that they were turning away volunteers for the first time ever in Ironman history. They turned away volunteers. How did the two of you feel with the volunteer support that there was?
Yeah, I think it was pretty spectacular. I know on the swim course, I feel like every 50 yards, at least, there was probably
There was a kayak. Yeah.
kayak. I think I heard they had 70 or 80 water support personnel, like, spread out throughout the whole course. So that was spectacular. The aid stations on the bike were very well staffed and supported. Especially in the heat, you always worry that volunteers get dehydrated too, and they might not be able to be out there for as long. But especially with those conditions considered, like, it was super well supported start to finish, 8 stations of the run.
Yeah, that was, again, that hands down, like, it was super great. And
There was too much ice. I'm not kidding. Like, they had towels. They put the towel over my head. Every race photo you see, I have a towel over my head, over my shoulders. I would pick up almost like 3 or 4 cups of ice at every aid station. There'd be more volunteers like, ice, ice, ice. I'm like, I can't carry it anymore. And I would put it down. I used arm pulling sleeves. And we talked about all this.
Yes.
But I put ice in all the ice pockets and the tri-jersey in the back and all that. And I had ice on me every step, every inch of the run.
I feel they really wanted you to make sure that they were there and then you had all of the things, whether you needed to or not. But yeah, Like the volume of things that you could have needed, it was all there. I felt very well supported. I had gear that dropped, halfway through the run, so I was trying to adapt based on that. So that was my first time having some like mortal hydration, and in addition to all the other stuff, but I think not only was it well staffed, but it was also well serviced with regard to the amount of materials that they felt that they were going to need. So I never felt like I was at a loss, or other athletes were at a loss of things that they might have needed. And I think, and I normally do this, and I know we tell our athletes to do this often, but I felt like I did it probably more frequently this time around, was just to really overtly make sure that we said thank you to all the volunteers. It's like, thank you guys so much for being here. But then, of course, they were always giving it back. They're like, we can't believe you're doing this. Thank you guys. So it was a lot of like good mutual thanking back and forth. But I think for a lot of people, that probably helped somebody just keep trucking along and pushing through and grinding to the end. So.
I will say one negative thing though, sir, to ask me something. So I picked up a gel, one of the Morton gels, at like mile 10 of the run.
Yeah.
Pretty far into the day. And the black packaging sitting on the table.
Oh, yeah.
It almost like burned my hand.
Nice.
So I picked up the gel. I'm like, should I really need this? And I need the energy, and it's that warm that I really didn't want to eat it. So with all the ice that I had, I put the gel in a cup of ice and ran with it for a while.
Good down.
And then eventually took it, but it was still a little bit warm. So that may be something IRONMAN can look into. It's like, can you keep the gels in like a little shaded canopy or something?
There you go.
Cooked in the sun. So that's the only negative I can go. Thing in the grass.
So to wrap up, Brian.
Yes.
What would you tell someone who is thinking about doing Rockford 70.3 for next year? What would you say to them?
I would say it's a pretty solid first course if you're doing your first 70.3. For a veteran, like I think, this is also can also provide a really great challenge. So you got a little bit of everything. So it's hills, it's heats, it's a river swim. If you're looking to PR your swim, this could be a great opportunity for that. But if you're looking for also a location that the people are very enthusiastic about having the event there, and you like having that support and being able to have that encouragement and that atmosphere and that energy to help get you through that event, then Rockford is a fairly solid spot for next year.
Chris, what would you say to someone who is considering they're on the fence about doing Rockford 70.3 next year?
I think with the ideal swing for a beginner with a little river, it's perfect for first timers. I would say you're planning for the race and for training. I would suggest a couple things. One, take advantage, as I did, and I really enjoyed the recon runs. If you're local, you get a chance to go to any of the events the local Rock River Multisport group does. They did a couple recon runs and recon rides. So I got to preview the bike course. And a lot of people said they felt it's a little hillier than they anticipated. It's about 1,800 to 2,000 feet of climbing, so good.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Flat course.
Decent.
But an honest course. No crazy steep hills, so just kind of rolling hills.
Yeah.
So if you can get a chance to recon or ride it virtually on full gas, they do that for preparation. And then my favorite thing, which I really like, even though it's a little more expensive, I enjoy the splurge for a hotel room at the embassy, the hotel that is literally right
next door. So
you can roll out of bed and walk 25 feet to the transition area. And use our own restrooms, our bathroom. So that was clever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to spoil themselves, it's a little pricey to stay right there, but it was pretty awesome.
I'll do a quick add-on to that. And myself and two of my friends that were also doing the race, we ended up in a pretty decent little Airbnb nearby. But heads up, a lot of the Airbnb or Verbo or whatever, there was a lot of like random like cancellations and other weird things going on. So I would say double check your reservations if you're going that route. But if you get an Airbnb and you have that opportunity and that all works out, and you're not terribly far from the venue, I will say once we got down there, parking seemed to be fairly easy. Everybody was giving good direction and guidance on where they could or could not park, and that was easy. So getting in and out of the venue actually was pretty easy. So I would say ease of use getting in and out. And then maybe the other piece of advice was by the time that you finish the event, if you don't want to walk all the way back to transition, there's a lot of good like little shops and restaurants right by the finish line. And one of them, I don't remember the name of it, but on their menu had Mountain Dew, and I crushed like 3 or 4 of those within a half an hour, and that was the best thing after that type of event. So a lot of options for you there, and so good overall menu.
So thank you, Coach Brian and Coach Chris, for the recap of Rockford 70.3. If you are interested in doing Rockford 70.3, registration should be opening soon, so stay tuned. Go on IRONMAN.com. And if you're not affiliated with a Tri Club, get affiliated with a Tri Club, put on your email so you are going to get that first spot to get that VIP early registration. So with that, stay tuned because we're going to talk about heat acclimatization as well as open water swimming and what's to come.